So while we're still waiting for the official FPL game to launch, I've done a bit more tinkering with my team in FPL Team, and I'm going to show you what I've done in this video. Now we're going to start, and I'll be honest, I didn't really do this on my last video, but I think it's really important, regardless of whether the game's come out yet, regardless of player prices, what we do have is the fixtures. And I would say, you want to pick your starting draft in FPL. I want to pick my starting draft in FPL, regardless of what you're doing. I want to do it with the next sort of 5 game weeks in mind. And I want to pick players from teams that I think have some decent fixtures. And I look at the top of the list, we've got Arsenal. They've got Man United and Leeds as their first two, which is a couple of decent fixtures. But then following on from that, they've got Liverpool, Forest, Man City and Newcastle in the next 4. Villa, they start off with Newcastle, but their fixtures get pretty good actually from game week 2 onwards. They've got Brentford, Crystal Palace, Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley, Tottenham. So Villa's from game week 2 are actually quite nice. You could quite easily get put off by that match day 1 fixture or game week 1 fixture against Newcastle. Bournemouth, bit of a mix. There's one player from Bournemouth I quite like. If he's priced right, I'll probably be starting with him in my team. Brentford, they're all right from game week 2 onwards, but I'd be just a little bit concerned about Brentford, with no Thomas Frank and their new manager, and Mbumo's probably going to go to Man United before the season starts as well. So a little bit dubious of Brentford. I won't go through all of the teams, but some teams that stand out that have got good fixtures to open up with at least. Chelsea, I think that's a pretty decent set of fixtures. We've just seen them win the Club World Cup. Exactly what that means in terms of their pre-season camp or recovery or whatever going into the season, in my mind, they're not really going to have a pre-season. They're going to use the Club World Cup as their pre-season, probably have a little bit of a break after they've won it, get back to normal training and ready for the season, basically. I think Chelsea might have like 1 or 2 friendlies, but I don't think they can have a pre-season camp because that's kind of happened in the Club World Cup, but I guess we'll see what happens. Who else have we got there? Yeah, Chelsea, Everton, they've got some pretty decent fixtures, as well. Liverpool's mixed in there. Fulham, not too bad, although for me, Fulham, I can't pick out a single Fulham player that I desperately want in my FPL team as things stand. You've also got Man City, have got a decent starting 4. Nottingham Forest, I think, look pretty good as well. They do have that Arsenal fixture mixed in match day 4, but they've got some pretty good fixtures. Spurs, actually, they do have Man City in match day 2, but to be honest, that's a pretty good start to the season that they have. I'd definitely be looking to get probably one or 2 Spurs players into my team, and that probably rounds off the list, to be honest. I'd worry a little bit about Wolves and how they perform without Cunha. After game week 4, they've got a pretty good set of fixtures, but yeah, that gives us sort of rundown of teams I think that have good fixtures that will lead me to picking a team. And actually, I'm just looking there. Crystal Palace aren't too bad either, although they do tend to start seasons a little bit slowly. Okay then, so starting off with my goalkeeper and my defenders then, I'm going to pick a goalkeeper who I think will he just always ends up as either the single top scoring goalkeeper of a season or as one of the leading goalkeepers, because Everton, I always say this with goalkeepers, people get bored of me saying it, but the best goalkeepers in FPL are honestly, they are ones that keep like an average amount of clean sheets, but also make a lot of saves, right? So even in the big games against tough oppositions, because they make a lot of saves, and Pickford in particular is pretty good at saving penalties too, they can still come out of these big games with a decent points total. So I think Pickford is a pretty good option. I've gone for Munoz and Gabriel, 2 I think of the leading defenders in the league last season. Munoz basically plays as a winger for Crystal Palace, right? And I just think with that in mind, he's going to get points, regardless of whether, they have tough games, keep clean sheets, whatever. I think Munoz is going to get points because he'll get attacking returns plus the odd clean sheet. Similar to, I guess, Everton, really. I would imagine Everton and Crystal Palace keep a similar number of clean sheets as the season goes on. The only thing I'd be a little bit concerned about is how Crystal Palace start the season, really. They're notoriously slow starters, I would say. So, the question is how well will they play come the start of the season? But obviously they're off the back of an FA Cup win, so yeah, I guess we'll see from there. Gabriel, I think, is the standout Arsenal defender. Arsenal consistently one of the best defences in the league seasons gone by. Arteta's built the team to be physical, difficult to beat. I think they'll keep some clean sheets. And Gabriel, we all know the threat that he poses from set pieces, particularly at the start of last season. That sort of petered off as things went along during the season, but we all know the threat that he poses from set pieces. And I've gone for Nico Williams as things stand, or Neco Williams. You know, that sort of third defender spot is up in the air, really. I'll go back to the fixtures. I've picked him because I think his fixtures, well, they look pretty good. And they rotate fairly well with Newcastle, who you'll see there. My other defender is Botman. I could go for another. My mind is I'll have 2 4.5 million defenders that can kind of rotate, and then 1 4 million defender. That's my sort of team structure. So Neco Williams and Botman are my 2 4.5s at the moment, but that could obviously change. And then I've gone for Rodon, who I think is nice and cheap. Certainly an FPL team anyway, been priced at 4 million. I'm sure there will be a 4 million defender that starts that will emerge when the game comes out, and that's basically who I'll pick for this spot. All right, into the midfield then, and as things stand, I've gone pretty safe and trying to pick penalty takers or just talismanic players from their respective teams, right? So naturally I've gone for Salah. He's probably going to be my captain for game week 1. I keep saying match day 1. I'm used to Club World Cup fantasy. I think he's going to be my captain for game week 1. And also with Salah, I'd say, yeah, Bournemouth. You last season you'd be a little bit hesitant about that fixture, but I think now they've lost Dean Howson, and I think Kirkez has gone as well, so they've lost 2 of their best defenders. I think Bournemouth might not quite be as strong as they were last season, so I'm quite happy to have Salah as my captain. Palmer, well, he just scored a brace and got an assist in the Club World Cup final. That might be all the confidence boost that he needed to come back to the Cole Palmer that we know and love. And I go back to the fixtures, right? There's 2, I'd say, midfielders that are going to be priced similarly in this sort of category. You're going to have Saka and you're going to have Cole Palmer, right? And you compare the fixtures. Arsenal kick off, fair enough, with Man United, Leeds. Then they got 4 really tough ones against Liverpool, Forest, City, Newcastle. Whereas Chelsea, until game week 7 at least, that's a pretty clean and fair run. And maybe game week 7 is a time that I potentially consider wildcarding because the Man City fixtures get pretty good as well. You know, Haaland could become a factor again. I've not necessarily picked Haaland in this team, just a little spoiler. So yeah, I've gone for Palmer over Saka based on that. I think you need to have one of those 2 in your team, in my mind, to start the season because they're going to play every game for as many minutes as possible and take penalties. And with that in mind, I picked Eze too. Again, it's just whether that sort of poor start to the season mentality continues at Crystal Palace. They just start off slow every year. But Eze is their best player, talisman. I think he's probably safe from a transfer now. I know Arsenal were looking at him, but they've signed Madueke now off of Chelsea. So that might mean that Eze is going to stay at Palace now. So yeah, he's on penalties. Well, shares him with Mateta, but I think is the main penalty taker for Palace. Free kick taker too, and just their absolute talisman. And I think now with Ismaila Sarr, one of the issues they had when Elise originally left last season was I think because Eze was the main threat that Crystal Palace had from an attacking point of view, defenders could focus on him and like double team him and just completely mark him out of games because they weren't too worried about other players in their team. But now Crystal Palace have other threats like Ismaila Sarr as well, and obviously Mateta in decent form last season. It's not just Eze who is their main threat. So I think defenders are going to have a different mentality when facing him next season. He should have a bit more space and a bit more time. And then Bowen, I just think he's always going to be a solid option in FPL. He's a consistent sort of 10 to 15 goal player. The only question mark I would have, because he played, I think, a majority of his games in the Prem at striker last season, is, well, FPL team have got him classed as a striker, and I think it's fair enough. As a midfielder, I'd probably predict him to be a forward, but I think there's always a chance that he could become a forward in the game next season. Sorry, I probably got confused between midfielders and forwards a few times there, but I personally think he'll stay as a midfielder, but he could well become a forward based on where he's been playing. And then you see that on my bench, you've got Yarmoliuk, if that's how you pronounce it. They're usually in FPL, and I said this with a 4 million defender, there's usually a 4 million defender that emerges that's going to start every game, and there's usually a 4.5 million midfielder that emerges that's going to start every game. So essentially, I will pick those players in those 2 positions because they're emergency bench cover if I ever need them, really. And yeah, that's my mentality at the moment with my midfield. Up front then, I've gone for Solanke, Evan Nilsson and Chris Wood. I've missed out certainly on Haaland at the moment. He could well become a factor again next season, but I look at the opening game weeks and I just don't see a way. Maybe that Arsenal game is the only time where I wouldn't captain Salah, but even then I just think Salah's the stronger captain on most weeks, really. And when Salah, we'll just go back to the fixture, sorry to keep flicking. When Salah plays Arsenal, Cole Palmer has Fulham. So I think that's a pretty decent fixture for him. And I look at the other captaincy alternatives as well. Palmer's got Fulham. I guess Haaland's got Brighton, to be fair. It's probably Palmer and Haaland that the alternatives aren't they? Yeah. So So maybe that week we don't captain Salah, but for the most of the rest of the week, I think he's going to be pretty much a perma captain. So yeah, don't have Haaland for that reason. Solanke, well, you've seen, I'm not going to go through the fixtures yet again. You've seen the starting fixtures that Spurs have. I think they're going to be pretty decent. And Spurs under Thomas Frank, I think are going to be much stronger. And I think Solanke, he's surely going to be the first choice centre forward for Spurs. I think without Son around, probably going to be their penalty taker too, I would hedge a bet. So yeah, I like Solanke. Think he'll tick those boxes for that reason. Evan Nilsson of Bournemouth, obviously Solanke's replacement for them when he left for Tottenham. He's in at 6 million in this game at the moment. I got a feeling he's going to be priced fairly well. We'll have a look at some forward alternatives in a second, because I think the forwards is where there could potentially be some changes to this team. And I've gone for Chris Wood. Again, I'll go back to the fixtures. Forest have a decent start to their season. They have lost Gibbs White and Alanga though, which does put me off a little bit. An alternative for Chris Wood could be Wissa, but Brentford are about to lose Mbeumo as well. So you know what I mean? There's always doubts about these players that you could have. So at the moment it's Chris Wood because he's probably going to start every game. He scored 20 Premier League goals last season and he takes penalties. And Brentford, I think, is a good fixture to kick off. And they've got a decent run as well. So that's the 11 as things stand. Obviously, all could change when the game comes out. We get official prices. I'll talk about some potential alternative forwards now. All right, so I haven't actually picked... In fact, I'll just resize this screen quickly. I haven't actually picked any other forwards in this or got this team up yet, but I'm just looking through the list of forwards and there's obviously some ones that I've missed out on. One is Isak. I could probably squeeze him in if I saved elsewhere in my team. Maybe if I dropped Eze for a cheaper midfielder or Eze or Bowen for a cheaper midfielder, I could potentially get Isak in. He feels like he's going to be a bit of a miss. And, well, players that have picked a team in this game, he's in 49.4% of teams and he's just not in mine. The more I think about it, the more I think I need to get Isak in. But then again, who does he come in for? I guess maybe Cole Palmer, to be fair. I guess maybe Cole Palmer. We drop Cole Palmer for someone cheaper and pick up Isak. That could be a way that I'd do it. Gyökeres of Arsenal. He really intrigues me. Really intrigues me. Obviously, the season he's just had at Sporting Lisbon has been amazing. Arsenal have been crying out for a centre forward. I would just want to give him a few weeks to get up to speed to see how he fits into that Arsenal team. And to be honest, when you look at the fixtures that Arsenal have, first two are pretty good, and then they get tough from 3 to 6. So maybe from game week 7 onwards, we'll get a good idea of, how he's playing for them, and yeah, we can make a judgment on whether we want to buy him. Watkins, 29% of teams he's been picked by. I guess with John Duran leaving, he's going to be the first choice forward now for Aston Villa. They obviously missed out on Champions League football. Very unlucky in that game against Man United. So, yeah, they'll be playing, on Thursdays nights now, I suppose. So, yeah, interesting one on Watkins. We've got Solanke as my pick. There's a few 7.5 million forwards here. Wissa, I just think Solanke's the pick of the bunch, to be honest. He plays for the best team of those 4 at the moment, although I can't really make a strong argument to say Spurs are better than Forest. But I do think he's got a good start to the season in terms of fixtures. I think Solanke is going to be a solid shout, to be honest. Just looking down the list, obviously Evan Nilsson, he's 6.5, sorry, not 6, but I think he could be a good option at that price. The rest, I'm intrigued to see how Fulkrug does for West Ham if he stays fit. I think he's a really good striker. And the rest, they just don't fill me with excitement, to be honest. And obviously I missed out on Haaland, who I've covered as well. So one player I think I'm looking at this list, obviously Haaland's one, but Isak as well. I feel like he could come in for Palmer come the start of the season, to be honest. Even though Palmer's just had that massive game in the Club World Cup, I could see Isak creeping into my team. All right, well, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there's any changes you'd make to this team. I imagine I'm probably going to get some pelters for leaving Isak out. But it's difficult, isn't it, with the pricing and the way it is at the moment to get everyone in. I think you got 3 premiums, basically. You got space in your team for 3 maximum premiums, and it's up to you who you go for out of those 3, really. Yeah, hopefully the game comes out this week. I'm still using FPL Team, but when the game does come out, of course, I'll do a little launch reaction stream and make my first draft, of course. That's what I always do. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the Golden Goal Fantasy Football channel so far, please do. It should be just here on your screen. I'll have plenty more FPL content coming your way right up until the start of the season. So yeah, make sure to subscribe, stick around and see so you can see that. I'll catch you in my next video. I'll stop rambling now.